Imagine conquering an empire that spans the ancient world, only to have your burial site vanish from historical records. In 323 BC, Alexander the Great died in Babylon. He was only 32 years old, yet by the time of his death, he had built one of the largest empires the ancient world had ever known, from Greece, through Egypt, across Persia, and deep into Central and South Asia. His name would live for thousands of years, but the body would set out on a journey all its own after Alexander's death. His generals scrambled for control of his empire, and one of them, Ptolemy, seized control of Egypt. Alexander's body was taken south. It was ultimately put in Memphis. But that wasn't the end of the story. The entire tomb was later moved to a lofty tomb room in Alexandria, the city founded by Alexander himself, for himself, and eventually, a lavish royal mausoleum known as the Soma became linked to Alexander's resting place. For centuries, the tomb preserved its place as one of the great monuments of ancient times. Kings visited it, Roman emperors visited it, and strong men lined up to face the conqueror's bones. The tomb was famous, the body was known to exist, the place was remembered. Then, something changed. The records were growing thinner and thinner. And eventually, Alexander's tomb faded out of history. For hundreds of years, Alexander's tomb was a part of the landscape of Alexandria. Ancient writers wrote about the city, travelers left accounts of monuments, and Roman rulers visited the tomb. Even Augustus, the first Roman emperor, he is said to have visited Alexander's body. For a time, there was no mystery. Everyone knew where Alexander was. But Alexandria itself would change. Earthquakes struck, the coastline shifted, buildings collapsed, monuments were dismantled. And in other places too, parts of the ancient city were, little by little, buried beneath later building. The splendid monuments of Alexandria were beginning to vanish. The lighthouse was eventually lost. The ancient palace quarter disappeared beneath the modern city. And somewhere in the midst of all this changing landscape, Alexander's tomb was lost. By the time of the 5th century AD, the tomb is never mentioned again in history. There is no definitive description of exactly where it was located. There is no surviving map showing where it ended. To date, no archaeological edifice has been verified as the tomb of Alexander. Centuries went by. Alexandria was built on the site of ancient Alexandria. New streets and buildings were constructed, and the once dominant and beautiful old city was now penetrable. New buildings were erected. The imperial city gradually waned under the pressure of the new city burgeoning upwards. Then, archaeologists started to look for it. They studied ancient texts. They looked at maps. They dug up ruins. They searched under contemporary streets. And they were beginning to ask a tough, troubling question. What if the tomb of Alexander was never destroyed? What if it's still there, beneath the modern city? Maybe just a few feet below the streets, Schaefer said. It's not so far-fetched to be discovered. And for more than a century, many archaeologists and adventurers have sought to solve this mystery for decades. There have been those who concentrated on the ancient heart of Alexandria, and some have suggested sites close to the old royal quarter of the city. Some scientists think that the tomb could be still under the existing neighborhoods. But there is a big problem. What did Alexander's tomb look like finally? We haven't got a clue. Ancient sources give hints, but not enough data to pin down a building with absolute certainty. Even if archaeologists found an ancient royal tomb under Alexandria, how would they prove it was Alexander's? An inscription might unravel the riddle, a royal dedication, a historical record, or perhaps the remains themselves. But after more than 2 millennia, even identifying the body would be unbelievably difficult, and the search continues. In recent decades, the ancient parts of Alexandria have been excavated by archaeologists. They have discovered statues, roads, public buildings, buried neighborhoods, and traces of the giant city that sat beneath the current one. Some think these discoveries bring the search closer. Some now say it has been found. Among the more fascinating theories is that Alexander's tomb lies beneath modern Alexandria. waiting to be found by future excavation, or maybe even inadvertent construction. But there's another way. Maybe the tomb was destroyed. Maybe its stones were recycled in building later. Is it possible that earthquakes and rising water destroyed what was left? Or perhaps the tomb's here, concealed beneath millennia of history. Today, Alexander the Great still defines the ancient world in the mind's eye. His empire vanished, his monuments disappeared, his tomb was neglected, but the hunt goes on. Because somewhere under the streets of Alexandria, a chamber may still exist in which lie the remains of the man who conquered the ancient world. For more than 2 millennia, history has been in search of Alexander. And maybe, but perhaps, the last resting place of the world's most famous conqueror and its closest case to Atlantis.